the Tambellini Group's New Normal in Higher Education. I'm Raechelle Clemmons, and joining me here today is Orlando Leon, Vice President of Information Technology and Chief Information Officer at California State University, Fresno. Welcome, Orlando.
Thank you, Ray. Appreciate being here and invited here to talk with you today. This is a fun topic, and so I'll let you kick it off. But hello, everybody. It's nice 100 degrees outside, but it's a cooler 72 to 75 in here. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Well, Fresno is probably like Dallas, where I'm at. It's also 100 here, so we can commiserate about the weather together.
Absolutely.
So, Orlando, we've seen the importance of technology increasing significantly in colleges and universities since the beginning of the year, driven by COVID-19 primarily. But up until now, it seems that colleges and universities haven't really adopted technology quickly in the past, and maybe especially have been kind of circumspect about adopting emerging technologies. Do you agree with that?
Generally speaking, I would say yes. I would say that now I've been at a few institutions, I'll highlight them quickly in a moment, but the culture of higher education has been perceived, and being in it for now 15 years, I do see it play out. We are risk averse, very generally speaking. And I would say the biggest factor that plays into this is perhaps there's not necessarily a sense of urgency. The urgency to change, the urgency to apply technology because things seem to be working. And of course, with COVID-19, with the huge shifts that come to play, the urgency appeared, and we did really well making decisions on really short notice. So I would say The urgency is still there. So I would love to see, as we move forward, to capitalize on this urgency and to say, okay, well, what do we need as we go forward? Now, at the beginning of my response, I did say that I think it depends a little bit. I had some great opportunities. I've come through the University of California system at San Francisco, so a public R1 heavy research, and I had 2 quick and great years at Stanford University, and now I'm in the Cal State system. I would say each of us has a different approach. That could be because we have more funds. It could be because at Stanford, let's say different areas were able to do more. They just had a lot more money, but also they were able to spend time on innovation. So I would say at certain places, certain groups will be able to prioritize using technology and trying to innovate as much as possible.
Okay, so COVID, really has maybe started a new normal in higher education. And as we think about that and we look towards whatever the during COVID and the post-COVID environment looks like, I'm really wondering what role emerging technologies are going to play. Do you think that we'll see that rate of adoption for emerging technologies in particular, things like machine learning, AI, blockchain? Do you think we're going to see that the adoption rate increase as we move forward? And if so, why? And how might these technologies be important to institutions in the future, do you think?
I personally hope that we'll see a growth in the trend of people adopting, and it will depend on, of course, the campus leadership. Do we have, let's say at my campus, the visionary leadership needed to sustain and say, okay, well, this was great during COVID-19. What does the new normal look like? What's the relevancy that we're going to play in higher education to support our students who will graduate and become those future leaders? And so I do hope to see that, because I feel that with the digital environments that are around us as students graduate, they will be expected to know more and do more with their phones than just consume Netflix or to do Facebook or TikTok or Twitter. So I really do hope we take this opportunity to say, okay, well, now we see what's going on. How do we keep this momentum going? So I really hope that also through external pressures, we've seen in the news even before COVID-19, the really great questions that we need to answer. Why do we need more funding in higher ed? Do we need to do more? Why don't we just send people to other opportunities like coding boot camps and let them do their thing? So I would say the external pressures will add to how we respond, and I do hope we'll see this trend continue. And certainly some campuses will continue to move forward with these emerging technologies.
And we've seen things like coding boot camps really explode in the last couple of years. And I think even recently, within the last week, Google announced a whole new set of certificates and programs that they're offering, right? So there's a lot of pressure.
Absolutely. Okay. Amazon, Google, and other big companies are stepping in to say, well, if higher ed's not going to move, then how do we encourage the conversation?
Sure. So I've been following your career for a while, and I know that you're a pretty innovative and experimental CIO when it comes to new technologies. Can you share some of the work that you've been doing there at Fresno State with, specifically around emerging technologies, and what insights or lessons have you learned?
Yeah, absolutely. And I wonder, thank you first, Ray, for saying that you've been following. I think it's been a fun journey. When I arrived at Fresno State in 2015, one of the first things I observed as I took my 100-day listening tour, I looked around, of course, at the campus, talked with students, faculty, community, of course, as well, and realized that Fresno State could be, and the Fresno and the Central Valley area really could be the next bright spot. There's so much hunger and thirst for things to come. We're well known for agriculture, so we grow things. But I have, as I've spoken with students, they are hungry and thirsty for learning technology as well. So as I started to move beyond that first few months, I really deeply considered, how do I encourage a culture of innovation and transformation here that will start with the university and then extend past its borders. So within that first year, we created an innovation team. I was able to set aside some funds, permanent funds, and say, let's hire 2 people, one person that I called the dreamer, someone who perhaps would think about moonshot ideas, and a second person who would serve as more of the grounder, bringing things back to practicality and reality. Now, those 2 people, it turned out.
Do they get along, the dreamer and the grounder? I'm curious.
They do. They're very good about collaborating. They're lighthearted. They don't mind sharing ideas, and they laugh a lot. I think that helps. But I would say that the 2 of them actually shift roles once in a while. One will dream one day and the other will dream the other day. So it's a good combination. They're still in their roles, although I would say we've hit a few bumps. I mean, even within that first year, they were questioning with me right there, how's this going to work? Is this going to actually, will I have a job next year? So we're in year 4 now, and I really hope we can continue because we've seen a lot of positive benefits. So we've touched on a lot of the emerging technologies that you've mentioned, the artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain, of course, IoT, so sensors of all types. And then most recently, especially in the COVID-19 era, is the question about artificial reality, virtual reality, extended reality, mixed reality, all the R's, and wondering how that could help our students to have perhaps a more immersive learning experience. And so I believe that having this innovation team has been really helpful because, one, it's not done out of perhaps excess or extra credit, but done really as a priority. And what we've tried to do is to focus on the real needs of the campus. And that starts with conversations, especially with our students and with our faculty. So maybe if I highlight one fun one that I've been over the past year, we've partnered with Amazon, and they've been great at supporting us and helping us and just guiding us through. We had one of their robots. It's about maybe this big. It's not that big, but what we built was what we called I was going to say a wellness bot, but HR wanted to name it something a little bit differently. So it's kind of a student engagement bot. And we brought it to homecoming, and it's on wheels, but it has a camera, it has LiDAR as well, and then it has some other sensors. We added a screen on top of it, and we essentially had it interact with a group of people during homecoming week. And it was good to be used as kind of a sense of fun, but then of anxiety relief. Think of the when we bring dogs to campus or to the airport, they can provide a lot of relief, and that was what this robot was meant to do. What I would say was really wonderful is that we're getting our students to really be the ones who are building up this kind of expertise with cloud technologies and all these other emerging technologies. So our students are really the ones benefiting, and they get to build a product, and they can be really proud of what they've done. So we're going to continue expanding this robot idea beyond right now with the wellness bot that I mentioned.
That is a great example, and I know that in other areas, robots have really started being used. If you think about the elderly as those types of companion, in those types of companion situations. So, did you do any analysis or surveys of students in terms of their interaction, and if it did in fact help stress relief or anything like that? I'm just curious.
I would say anecdotally, yes. I would say, sure, absolutely. As part of our assessment of the program and its effectiveness, it would be really great to do a formal survey. The robot still exists, so we're actually trying to grow that out. And I'm going to take your idea, Ray, and say, okay, let's go innovation team and students, how do we then put metrics to this? So we actually have a couple of faculty part-time on our payroll, and they're helping us with our digital transformation journey. And one of the things is how to assess this. And they're great at assessment, we're good at playing, right? So we're going to get our faculty involved. So I'm going to give that a try.
That's a great partnership there to really bring that that research discipline into the experimentation as well. So I think that's awesome. So robots are one of those things that are kind of fundamental to the idea of the fourth industrial revolution, which we hear a lot about, right? That it's coming, or we're already in it. That technology in the fourth industrial revolution will just fundamentally change how we live and how we work, and maybe even how we learn. So as you think about that, as you think about this revolution that we're in the middle of, what do you think colleges and universities might look like in the future if they are kind of fully tech enabled or fourth industrial revolution enabled?
Absolutely. I've thought about that a lot, and especially since I arrived here, I've been in higher ed for 15 years and noticed we still have systems that might be built on COBOL, right? So mainframe systems, but hopefully they're going away. But that does say that even going forward 5, 10 years, maybe even longer, we will need some kind of ERP type or CRM types of systems. We need to track records. What those will look like, I'm not sure. But what I really hope to see is an application of what we're doing, let's say on the pedagogical side, of how our faculty are teaching and also modifying the ways they teach. We use something called the SAMR model here, which SAMR represents something along the lines of substitution, augmentation, modification, and then redefinition. So how we teach in the classrooms, I think that can also apply to how technology is used to then how we basically modify the way that we do our work as well. So if I can take one quick example of just day-to-day of paper signatures, right? That's an easy example. We can plug in DocuSign or Adobe Sign. That would basically be going and substituting paper for digital. But what's the next step of then augmenting and then modifying how we do our work, because now there's DocuSign, and one day redefining. So I won't go into full example, but what I'll do is I'll say that I would believe that the day-to-day work on the administrative side and as well as the academic side, I'm envisioning that artificial intelligence and machine learning together, along with voice assistants and other assistants, will really change the way in which that we will see how students will learn and they'll experience. So if I can spend a couple of moments, I'm going to read to you something I've written for a vision exercise that I've done in the past.
That would be great.
Yeah, thank you. Let me start off with something that Gartner has stated, that the future of the student experience is personal. So there's a growing emphasis on how our students will experience the daily life. And in some ways, how we talk about things now across the country in higher ed is student success. And so one aspect that I'll say is that student success can look like a really great student experience. So my son's name is Orion. He'll go to college, perhaps, hopefully, perhaps in about 8 years or so. So let's imagine a day in the life of Orion. So Orion is a third-year student now, majoring in computer science at Fresno State, let's say. And he's expecting and hoping to graduate in 4 years total. So that, let's say that's the spring of 2032. So when Orion started as a freshman, the university had some standard issue technology. So they provided him with an Apple iPhone version 18, an Apple Watch Series 12, and a Google Glass version 6. And then, of course, a mobile internet hotspot. Now, one night, after studying for midterms all night, Orion falls asleep on his couch and forgets to set his alarm. Well, no problem. He has an exam next day at 9 a.m., so his phone, along with interacting with different systems, it's connected to something we built in-house in the year 2022 called the Bulldog Genie, and it intelligently uses AI and ML to really dig through a lot of information about Orion's life and his schooling, and it from his first 2 years, and it wakes him up at 8:24 a.m. It gives Orion just enough time to brush his teeth and to put on hopefully a clean set of clothes, and then to start going out the door. So, well, as he heads out the door, his Apple Watch kind of nudges him and notifies that he forgot his backpack and he forgot his phone and his smart glasses. So he goes back and rushes in and gets that. So
But
now,
do his laundry, so he had the clean clothes. That's
yeah,
what I want to know.
hopefully another day ago, right? So now, after getting toward the car, Orion puts on his Google Glass and information starts to flow to his Google Glass, and it lets him know the best route to drive to campus. So the Bulldog Concierge, a system that was jointly developed here on campus, sends him a visual notification that there's actually construction on his usual route. So it reroutes him and he gets to drive to campus. As he's about 3 minutes away from campus, Google will then consult, if you can't tell, we're Google campus right now, consults with him, and his calendar knows where his first class of the day is, where he has his exam at 9 a.m. And it says, okay, please go to this parking lot. And of course, with our great visualization systems, we know how many parking spaces are available. Right. So he goes to the parking lot, parks, and then as he starts to get out of his car, Google is also integrated with the city system somehow, magically, perhaps, that is talking with the pedestrian crossing systems, because our street that goes west to east is really busy. But it tells them, okay, within 15 seconds, you're going to get a crossing signal and you can cross safely. So that happens. Orion walks across the street safely, and then he gets to his class right on time at 8:58 a.m. to be able to sit down, take a breath before his exam. Well, after finishing all the exams for the day, Orion prepares to meet with his study group because they have a presentation tomorrow. So as he's walking toward the student union, there's of course a whole bunch of sensors on campus, IoT types of sensors. It informs him that his teammate, Kim, is running about 5 minutes behind. So then he gets a little chance to breathe. And then as he's walking through the doors of the student union, the system, the phone or his watch will ask him, okay, Orion, would you like a coffee? Because you have a few minutes. Orion will then nod his head, doesn't have to say anything, and so it orders his favorite drink from the local Starbucks on campus. As he gets to the elevator to get to the 3rd floor where his meeting's going to be, he doesn't have to push anything. His phone talks with the NFC, the near field sensors, and it validates, securely authenticates who he is so that he's allowed to go up to the 3rd floor. As he's walking toward the conference room, his phone will automatically send the presentation and notes to the Google Jamboard, whatever version's available there. So it's up and running right there. As he sits down, this robot comes into the room with his Starbucks Frappuccino all ready and ready for him to drink. So then he sits down, gets his Frappuccino, and of course, Kim comes in a few minutes later. So I can go on, but the point of the story there is that I think the future of a modern campus involves a lot of deep learning of students, student behaviors, and of course all the normal information that comes from the academic side and the administrative side to really well inform and really improve the student experience as well.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think you probably should get a little bit of a commission there from Google and Starbucks and whoever else you mentioned. And since you mentioned a competitive analyst firm, I would be remiss if I did not say that Tambellini Group is an analyst and advisory firm for 20 years focused exclusively on higher education. So
I'm very appreciative of the Tambellini Group as well as you better. So absolutely.
So, okay, so prediction time, my last question for you. If you have to think about and maybe predict the technology that you think, of all the different types of technologies you've mentioned that will be most important or have the biggest impact on higher education, and the one that you think institutions and your peers, IT leaders, should really begin exploring and experimenting with now, what would you say that is?
Well, I'm gonna do a 2-step response. I think most people are already starting or well on their way in their cloud journey. And so without being mostly in the cloud, some of these technologies, even the story I just shared, is not necessarily going to be easily done. So I would say universities need to really explore cloud and how it can get there, because that will open up a lot of doors. And then again, going back to the story, then I would say if I had to choose one set of technologies, I would say it's going to be related to how we use data and information in, of course, a very ethical way, of course, which is another big topic to discuss, but using artificial intelligence and then the subset of AI, which is machine learning and then deep learning, to really get to understand how we use the vast amounts of information. We have a lot. We don't need more necessarily, but how to use our existing vast amount of information to then provide a better academic and non-academic co-curricular experience for our students, which then hopefully creates a better experience for our staff and our faculty and everyone else. So I would say my hope is that we would all start to really work together to look at how we can use AI and ML to use our data better, and that will bring us to a new future sooner than later.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Orlando. I really appreciate your time and your insights. It's been so much fun to talk to you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ray.
All right, everybody. See you next time.
Take care.